Emily Carter never imagined that the worst moment of her marriage would happen in a hospital room. With sunlight coming through the blinds and machines humming like nothing was wrong, she had just come out of surgery. Her body felt heavy, her thoughts slow, but her heart was still hopeful. She believed that when her husband walked in, he would hold her hand, tell her everything would be okay, and remind her they were a team. Instead, Mark stood at the end of the bed, distant and stiff, as if he were there to finish a task, not support his wife. He didn't ask how she felt. He didn't ask if she was in pain. He looked at his watch, then at the floor, and finally spoke in a calm voice that cut deeper than shouting ever could. He said he was done. He said the marriage no longer worked for him. He said he needed a life that felt easier, more stable, and less complicated. Emily tried to process his words, but they came too fast. She asked him to wait, to give her time to heal, to talk later. Mark shook his head. He had already decided. He said he felt alone for years. He said she was always busy, always tired, always distracted. He said love shouldn't feel like hard work. What he didn't say was just as clear. He believed she had failed him. He believed she didn't contribute enough. He believed he was carrying the weight of their life alone. Emily wanted to explain. She wanted to tell him the truth. But the truth felt useless in that moment. Her chest ached, her body hurt, and her heart felt too tired to fight. So she stayed quiet. Mark left the room without looking back. 2 days later, a nurse walked in with a thin envelope. Inside were divorce papers. Mark hadn't come himself. He hadn't called. He hadn't even sent a message. Emily signed where she was told to sign, her hand shaking. Her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall in front of anyone. She remembered how they met 12 years earlier at a friend's barbecue in Portland. Mark had been charming, confident, and full of plans. He talked about the future like it was something he could build with his own hands. Emily had admired that. She had admired him. In those early years, they laughed easily. They stayed up late talking about travel, dreams, and the kind of life they wanted. When Mark proposed, Emily said yes without hesitation. She believed love was about loyalty, patience, and growing together. Her career grew quietly alongside their marriage. She worked long hours, took night classes, and earned promotions one step at a time. By the time she became a senior financial analyst, her salary had reached $130,000 a year. But she never talked about it at home. Mark never asked. Emily paid her share of the bills. Sometimes she paid more. She saved money, invested wisely, and made sure they were secure. She didn't brag. She didn't correct Mark when he spoke like he was the main provider. She thought keeping peace mattered more than being seen. She believed love didn't need proof. After she left the hospital, Emily returned to an apartment that no longer felt like home. Mark had moved out. His side of the closet was empty. The silence felt louder than any argument they had ever had. Friends called offering comfort. Emily thanked them and said she was fine. At night, she sat on the couch staring at the wall, replaying Mark's words in her mind. She wondered when he had stopped loving her. She wondered if being strong and quiet had made her invisible. 3 weeks later, the news reached her without warning. Mark was engaged. A friend mentioned it carefully, as if the words might break her. The woman's name was Laura Bennett. She was outgoing, confident, and worked in real estate. She posted smiling photos online, always dressed perfectly, always surrounded by people. The engagement moved fast. The wedding date was already set. Emily felt something inside her go numb. She wasn't angry. She wasn't jealous. She was simply tired. It felt as if the chapter of her life had been closed without her consent. She didn't attend the wedding. She didn't send a message. She didn't explain herself to anyone. She focused on healing both physically and emotionally. At night, when the city lights reflected on her window, Emily questioned herself. She wondered if she should have spoken up. If telling Mark the truth about her career and income would have changed anything. If being more visible would have made her more loved. But deep down, she knew the answer. Mark hadn't left because of money. He had left because he wanted control, comfort, and admiration without effort. He wanted a partner who fit his image, not a woman who quietly carried her own strength. Emily didn't know it yet, but this ending was not the end of her story. It was the moment her silence stopped protecting others and started protecting her. And while Mark rushed toward a new beginning, unaware of the truth he had ignored, Emily stood at the edge of something unknown, wounded, wiser, and slowly learning that being unseen had never meant being unworthy. Emily Carter never thought freedom could feel this quiet. After the divorce, she returned to her work as a senior financial analyst in Seattle, moving through the office doors with a new determination she hadn't realized she possessed. Every spreadsheet, every meeting, every late-night call became a reminder that her life was hers alone to build. Her colleagues noticed the change immediately. Emily carried herself differently, not louder, not demanding, but calm, confident, and unshakable. She rented a small townhouse near the waterfront. It wasn't extravagant, but it had large windows that let sunlight pour in, a small garden she could manage, and a view of the harbor that made her mornings feel hopeful. She unpacked her boxes slowly, savoring the quiet of a space that belonged entirely to her. For the first time in years, she didn't feel the weight of anyone else's expectations. Mark, on the other hand, was discovering that appearances could be deceiving. Life with Laura Bennett wasn't as simple as he had imagined. Her energy was bright, her smile constant. But it came with demands he hadn't anticipated: weekend trips, fine dining, designer clothes. Credit card statements arrived faster than he could handle. Tension filled their apartment the way silence once had filled Emily's. He began to notice things about Laura that reminded him strangely of Emily's subtle strength. She managed everything without complaint. She built a life quietly, steadily, and responsibly. Emily, meanwhile, was thriving. Promotions came faster than she expected. She was now managing her own department, leading her team with patience and precision. Her income grew steadily, giving her a sense of independence and accomplishment she had never flaunted but deeply appreciated. She treated herself kindly, allowing small indulgences she had long denied herself during her marriage weekend trips to the mountains. Evenings at art galleries, dinners at quiet restaurants by the water. She laughed more. She slept more. She felt alive again. Then came the night she never expected at a dinner party hosted by mutual friends. Mark attended with Laura, confident, unaware that Emily would be there. He didn't expect her to walk in that evening looking healthier, brighter, and more self-assured than ever. She greeted friends politely, her presence understated yet commanding attention. Mark noticed immediately the old familiarity of admiration tugging at him, but now mingled with a pang of regret. The conversation turned to work, as it often did. A former colleague casually mentioned Emily's career. She's doing really well, making about $130,000 now, maybe more. The words fell in the air like a sudden gust of wind. Mark's face went pale. He laughed nervously at first, trying to mask the surprise. "That's not possible," he said. The room went quiet. Others gently corrected him. Mark's confusion and disbelief were visible to everyone. Emily listened calmly, saying nothing. She didn't need to correct him, didn't need to prove herself. She let him face the reality he had ignored for years. That night, Mark could barely sleep. He remembered the long years he had spent judging her as if she were lesser, believing she contributed less than him, failing to notice the quiet strength that held their lives together. Every memory rearranged itself painfully. Emily paying bills without complaint, managing crises without drama, remaining patient and loving even when life demanded more than she should have given. Mark realized, too late, that he had abandoned someone extraordinary. Weeks later, Mark approached Emily near her office, rehearsing words he hoped would fix the past. Emily noticed him but didn't stop immediately. When she finally did, he looked at her with eyes full of something she hadn't seen before: wrath, honesty, and a fragile hope. "I didn't know," he said softly. "About your career. About your income. I judged you unfairly." Emily nodded, her expression serene. "You didn't ask," she said. The words were gentle, not bitter. She had no need to remind him of the years, of the pain, of the silence she had endured. She simply let it stand as truth. Mark tried to explain, to apologize, to find a place where he could belong in her life again. But Emily was no longer the same woman who had waited silently for him in a hospital room. She had learned to value herself without his validation. She had discovered the power of independence and quiet confidence. She had rebuilt her life from the inside out, stronger, wiser, and unwilling to shrink for anyone's comfort. Over the next months, Emily's life flourished. She met Daniel Harris, a kind widower who appreciated her depth, her humor, her strength. He listened, he understood, he admired. With Daniel, there were no games, no judgments, no measuring of worth, just mutual respect and connection. Emily realized that real love didn't require proof or struggle. It came naturally, without tension, without pretending, and without compromise of who she was. Mark watched from a distance, realizing with mounting frustration that life had moved on without him. The woman he had underestimated, the quiet, independent, capable woman he had abandoned, was now living fully, unapologetically, and happily. Every success she achieved was a reminder of what he had lost. He saw Emily in public, laughing freely, confident in her own world. And he could only recognize the consequences of his choices. Emily never sought revenge. She never flaunted her success or wealth. She simply lived her life with integrity, kindness, and grace, proving that the strength she had always carried quietly was more powerful than any argument, any confrontation, any regret Mark could feel. Her happiness was her own, and nothing Mark or anyone else could take from her. By the end of the year, Emily had achieved what she never imagined possible: independence, love, respect, and peace. She had moved past heartbreak into a life that felt purposeful and complete. And while Mark learned the hard way that arrogance and ignorance come at a cost, Emily's story became one of quiet triumph, reminder that true worth is never measured by someone else's acknowledgement, but by the strength and courage to stand for oneself. She walked through the city streets, sunlight reflecting off the buildings, with Daniel by her side, smiling easily. She thought about the past, about Mark, about Laura, and felt no bitterness. Only gratitude for survival, for lessons learned, and for a future she had built with her own hands. Emily Carter had finally discovered that life's greatest victories come not from revenge, but from resilience, dignity, and the courage to embrace the person you are meant to be. And for the first time in a long time, she felt unstoppable.